Hello, I am Citizen Sleeve, and hasn't it been a little while? But I am back, and let's jump straight into it. Console wars, Game Pass, and tribalism. This is something that's been going on since I was a kid in the 80s. Back then it was Sega and Nintendo. They were the big kind of console war face-off, and everyone was on one side or the other. And it was generally because a parent could only afford one of the damn things because they were expensive, so you defended that particular one. But even back then, I found it exceptionally tedious and ludicrous as an argumentative stance, because most people just want to play as many games as they can on as many platforms as they possibly can. And obviously now in 2021, console wars are seemingly refired again because of Game Pass and because of PS5 exclusives. Now, for the sake of this discussion, I'm only going to touch upon PC. Partly because Game Pass you can obviously get on PC, and partly because PS exclusives are now moving somewhat to PC. So we'll mention that later on. But let's kind of start at the beginning here. Consoles are very expensive. We all know that for a lot of people. You're now talking about $500 or whatever for the latest consoles. And a lot of people can only afford to invest in one particular platform. And that's where this notion of tribalism comes in. This idea that because you can only afford that particular platform, you feel the necessity to defend that platform against other platforms. I find this utterly nonsensical, because these platforms are owned by multi-billion-dollar companies. These plastic boxes that we're buying, you're not defending the box or the games necessarily, you're really defending the company. And these companies are rich enough to really not need any defense from you whatsoever. So all you're doing is defending a brand that you've been loyal to. Now, I'm quite lucky. This year I'm 42. So I've been around for a long time in the gaming world. I started playing games when I was a young kid in the 80s. And it was always silly back then. I remember we had one very lucky Christmas when my mum and dad, who weren't rolling around in cash when we were kids, they worked loads of jobs and long hours, essentially managed to get us one Christmas. I got a Super Nintendo with Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting and A Link to the Past and Secret of Mana, Aladdin, all these things. And my brother got a Mega Drive 2 with Streets of Rage 2 and Sonic 2. And we had the best of both worlds for a little while. And most people just can't afford that. It's a lot of money. So that one Christmas, we were very, very lucky. Every console has its particular games that are exclusive to that platform in order to make sure that that platform sells more effectively. Fast forward to now, and it's still the same kind of thing. PlayStation has always doubled down on its exclusives throughout the years, and has had some very, very strong titles which have only got stronger over the years. God of War, Uncharted, Ratchet and Clank. Now we've got things like Spider-Man by Insomniac. All these great games that are locked into a platform. Nintendo have always been the big ones though, with their Mario games, their Zelda games. There's so many exclusives that are really highly thought of in the Nintendo ecosystem that they do the same as well, and they're often walled off gardens. Now, Microsoft has never been as strong in terms of those exclusives. Obviously, we've got things like Halo and Gears of War and Forza, and they're all very, very strong titles for the most part, with dips here and there. But since the launch of Game Pass, and now the strength, this year in particular, of Game Pass, and the buying of studios, Bethesda, etc., especially online and on Twitter, the vitriol of certain platform defenders has just gone way over the top. And it's just unnecessary. Look, if I take a different stance, and I take the stance just to flip the coin a little bit, that yes, say I've bought a PS5 for $500, or I bought a Series X for $500, and I can't afford the other platform, so I'm missing out on certain games, then inherently, I guess there is a position that you take where you say to yourself, well, hey, why have they got that, and why have they got this? But that's the inherent nature of a platform that you want to push to sell more. You need things that only that platform has. It's not dissimilar to the streaming services that kind of kick-started with Netflix. Disney Plus came along now, Hulu, HBO, all these platforms have particular exclusive things, programs, films, that you can only watch on those platforms, and that's why you pay for them. If they were on other platforms, you wouldn't then pay for that platform. There would be no point. And that's why PC, I think, is somewhere in the middle ground in all this at the minute. Now, I get, to some extent, PlayStation fans' disapproval of Bethesda in particular, because you're going to miss out on Starfield, Elder Scrolls 6, and a lot of other big games that the Bethesda game studios are going to be releasing exclusively now on Xbox and on Game Pass. And also the ownership. Okay, fine, a lot of people like to own games, whether it's physical, whether it's digital, and they don't like the idea of what they consider to be renting things, although a lot of stuff on Xbox will be there for at least 6 months or more, and all the big stuff, first party, will of course be day and date on release. So I kind of get some elements of this argument, but I also think it's really, really silly. Bethesda. A lot of people on various platform sides argue that Bethesda are a company that have always been third party and therefore should continue to be. Well, Microsoft paid $7.5 billion for a reason. To bolster their first party on top of all the other studios they bought and attract more people that want to join that particular ecosystem. Now I get it again. People who are locked into a platform aren't going to be able to afford another console to be able to play those particular games. But I think a lot of people are missing something with Bethesda, and that is that they have worked with Microsoft for a very, very long time. This isn't just Microsoft acquiring a company because they've got games. There's a reason Elder Scrolls Morrowind first came to Xbox, in 2001, 2002. They have a very long-standing relationship. And if you do the research, you'll realise that these two companies have been working kind of in tandem, especially in technological terms, for a really long time. It's not just a random acquisition where they get a load of games. Game Pass is great value. I don't think anyone can argue with that. For $10 a month, $15 I guess if you're getting Ultimate, you are in essence getting hundreds and hundreds of games, loads of exclusives, a ludicrous amount of third-party games, and right now I think, and as before, you can of course pay the $1 for 3 months if you want to start out. Now this helps people out who can't afford $70, $60 games right now. It helps people out who are struggling during a pandemic, but a lot of people argue that, I only want to own the games. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. But why is there such a problem with having a myriad of options and choice for those who can't necessarily afford those particular games? In an ideal world, I would like to own a PS5, a Series X, a Switch, and a really powerful PC. Because then I can do everything, right? At the moment, I can't afford that. I can afford what I have. I've had to sell my PS4 Pro. I've had to sell my Switch. I currently have an Xbox One X and an OK PC. The only reason I have a PS5 right now to play on is because my brother lends me his PS5 every few weeks so I can play those few exclusives that I haven't been able to because I simply can't afford a PS5. Now what Game Pass has allowed me to do is jump into tons of games I would have never been able to afford right now, or maybe wouldn't have even ever tried. And that's a wonderful thing, because it provides a democratization of gaming for those on a really stringent budget. And again, we can jump between these things and start talking about Bethesda games aren't going to be on that platform, but Nintendo games have never been on other platforms. What's interesting to me is, if you're really inclined right now, you would get a PS5, you would have your gaming PC, and then you'd be able to play Game Pass on that PC, and you'd still have your exclusives on the PS5. So the whole notion of tribalism, in my opinion, is something people are sticking to because they just want a position to shout from, to rage from. And in this day and age, what's the point in fighting over a plastic box that a mega corporation has been selling you? We all just want to play great games, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I just wish there was more of a balance in the way people saw each of their platforms and their strengths and weaknesses, and how to look at them and perceive them effectively. Nintendo is never going to start releasing their first-party titles on other platforms. Nintendo is a very unique company. They have some of the strongest IP in the industry, and they always will, and have for many, many years now. But that's never been a problem. PlayStation has always had incredibly strong IPs that have always been locked to those platforms. That's never been a problem. But now Microsoft has waded in, and Game Pass has become this huge thing. A lot of people are losing their minds because they suddenly have quite a lot of really, really good exclusives on the way, at least, especially from the behemoth that is Bethesda, and some people will miss out. Well, I'm going to miss out because I haven't got those other platforms, but I'm absolutely fine with that because at some point, no doubt, I'll be able to play those things. What's very interesting right now is that PlayStation is starting to dip their toes into the PC market. We've seen Horizon Zero Dawn, we've seen Days Gone, there are rumours Ghost of Tsushima will appear relatively soon, and they're starting to realise that you do, if you want that extra income stream, to try and jump onto something like PC. Now, Microsoft has been releasing their games on PC for a while anyway, but now, of course, you've got the Game Pass equivalent, which features a lot of what you get on the console, and also some stuff you can only get on the PC via that service. So all I'm really trying to say is, just try and look at this situation with some balance, and don't end up being a loyalistic fanboy. Everyone loves playing games, and everyone wants to play the best games. Now, another argument against Game Pass, I guess, is a lot of the service games that have started appearing day in, day one broken. And that is maybe a touch of a concern. We are seeing games like Outriders, we are seeing games like the very recently released D&D Dark Alliance that are essentially buggy messes at launch, and maybe in the back of people's minds they're thinking, are these companies just releasing it on Game Pass because they know they've got an immediate audience and they can do the release it broken, fix it later? And that's a whole nother argument for another video which will be coming relatively soon. But I just think the way things are operating right now, with the exclusives and business model that PS5 has, with the very different business model, although similar in some cases, that Nintendo has, and the very different business model that Microsoft is trying out, is an excellent time to become a gamer. Look, gaming is a very expensive hobby, and even when I was okay with cash and earning a relatively good amount, it was expensive back then. But just play how you want to play on what you can play on. Whether it's $10 a month for Game Pass, whether it's $70 for the latest PS5 game, or $60 for the latest Nintendo game, or Steam, or GOG, which is a little bit cheaper generally than console games, just play on the platform that you feel most comfortable on, that you enjoy the most, and then supplement that platform with other avenues of gaming. Be calm, be relaxed about where you play and what you play. There's no need for the vitriol, fanboyism that we're starting to see again and again and again on social media, and in particular Twitter. And that's why I felt like I needed to make this video. I've been gaming so long now. I've seen console wars since I was a kid, as I mentioned. When PlayStation came out in 96, 97, there was that. Then Xbox in 2000, 2001. And every time it seems like people have to jump on a particular bandwagon to protect this plastic box that these companies sell you, these billion-dollar companies, and defend them to the hilt. There's no need. There isn't any need. Like I said, if you could afford every console, and you could have every exclusive and play on every platform, then that's what you'd do. That's what I would do. I wouldn't have any problem or notion of having to lock myself down to a particular platform. But especially in the midst of a pandemic, when people are losing their jobs, being made redundant, struggling for health insurance and healthcare, the fact that we've got a service that allows us to play all of these brand new games for a really long time, or forever in many instances if they're first party, I think is a testament to what needs to be done to support a lot of people in these really difficult times. Right, now thank you for listening and watching. It's been a while, I know, and I wanted to do this part at the end of the video. I'm going to do the usual, sub to the channel, like the video, come and support me. But what I really want to start doing now is building a proper community where we can discuss things in a fair and balanced way without just going mental at things that we don't like or that we have to drop onto one side of this massive British Bulldog style argument all the time. Let's talk about things properly. Talk to me in the comments. What are your position in this particular discussion? Are you on one side and you're just staunchly one console, staunchly one platform, won't have it? Or are you more eclectic? Do you like the idea now of having your PS5 and major exclusives, for instance, or is that just your main platform? Do you like the idea of having Nintendo having their own walled-off garden? Or would you like to see some of their stuff move somewhere else? It'll never happen, but hypothetically. And Xbox, who are just taking a left turn and doing something completely different that the industry hasn't seen before. They're allowing more gamers in, whether you want to play on your tablet via xCloud or on your phone, or whether you want to play on your PC, whether you want to play on an actual console or not. I think it's a great time to be a gamer. And all this vitriol, hatred, arguments and raging is just a symptom of people jumping down one particular position and not having the perspective to look across the broader range of things that we're seeing in this modern game industry. Look, console wars should be dead by now. Tribalism of consoles should be dead by now. But they just seem to rear their head more and more and become more and more prevalent. And it's exacerbating to me as an old school gamer who sees people fighting over something that really is quite meaningless. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. I am back. There's more stuff coming. The next one is probably going to be something about really dodgy and broken launches of games, which we're seeing more and more lately. But talk to me in the comments. What's your stance on this stuff? What's your position? What do you interpret as the way to play games, the platforms that you play on, how you play games now? Because for me, I just want to play games on everything. Okay, folks, I've been Citizen Sleeve. I'll speak to you in the comments. And as ever, take it easy.